We're sorry. The number you have reached is not in service. Please check the number or try your call again. This is a recording.
Are you listening?
Listen to people. Learn what you can.
What is racist and what is just ignorance?
If you've got a friend or an ally or somebody in your corner there to support you, amazing.
I just can't wait for the day where we're no longer pleasantly surprised that someone is LGBT+.
Ask questions on a personal level, do better.
Asking pronouns.
It was like the moment that I realised I was different.
Winning that award topped this year off for me.
Because without you, this world wouldn't be the same.
Are you listening?
Are you listening?
Are you listening?
Are you listening?
Disclaimer: all views shared by young people are their own. They do not represent the views of Oxfordshire youth.
This is a trigger warning. During this episode, we will be discussing themes including self-harm, suicide, eating disorders, abuse, anxiety and depression, and other themes on mental health. If this is triggering to you, feel free to click off the episode and check out another episode.
Hi there, it's Darius. I'm the youth-led content creator here at Oxfordshire Youth. We are so excited to be on season 4, and this is the first episode of Are You Listening?, the Oxfordshire Youth podcast. We are so happy that you could join us. Make sure you subscribe. Share with your friends, your family, your colleagues and your teams. Share on social media and amplify the voices of young people to make sure that many more people are actually listening. We want these Health Watch episodes to reach every professional working with children and young people, whether that's in Oxfordshire or beyond. Let's get into this episode. Hello and welcome back to Are You Listening?, the Oxfordshire Youth podcast. We are back for season 4. It's super exciting. The Oxfordshire Youth podcast is here for young people to talk about what they really care about. It's for young people, by young people. At Oxfordshire Youth, we wanted to make sure that young people had a space to feel safe and that they could access to speak about things that they really cared about in a space where they felt confident. We are kicking season 4 off with this very amazing mini-series brought to you by Health Watch. We will be talking all things health, from mental health, invisible and visible disabilities, and neurodiversity. In today's episode, we will be talking about mental health, which we'll be diving into in just a moment. Health Watch are the county's independent health and social watchdog. They collect your opinions and experiences to inform and influence the services that happen within this county. If you have any questions for them, they will take it to all of the people who need to know. So we are really grateful that they are supporting and sponsoring these episodes. And before we jump into today's episode, we're almost there. We need to thank St Edward's School because we are in this amazing studio space. So a huge shout out to them for these fabulous facilities so that we can actually record the start of season 4 of Are You Listening? Today, we will be starting with mental health. I am excited to be joined by the new members of this year's podcast crew, Sid, Hamzah and Esah. Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? I'm going to jump round and ask everyone to just say their name and their pronouns and introduce themselves. I'll start with you, Hamzah.
Hey, my name's Hamzah. Good to be here. My pronouns are he, him, and yeah, good to be here.
Amazing. Sid?
My name's Sid and my pronouns are he, him.
Hello, my name's Esah, my pronouns are he, him, and I love communicating with other people, and I'm currently studying level 3 media.
Amazing. So we have an amazing group here, and we're delving into all things mental health. So mental health is anything that sits within the mental space. We all have mental health in some capacity. We can have good mental health, we can have bad mental health, or mental ill health. And it's everything that happens up here in our head. We can, be air quoted healthier in that mental health, and also we could be less healthy. Just like in our physical bodies, you could be more or less healthy. So, what does everyone think about mental health? What does that mean to you when you hear that come up in conversation?
Mental health is the thing that powers any individual to pursue life in general. I guess the best way to say it is, if you're not mentally healthy, you don't really see reason to have goals or aspirations or anything. So I think mental health is really important, especially if you want to live a long, fulfilling life, like and live a meaningful one and find a purpose.
Mental health can be people's biggest weakness and their biggest strength. It really depends on how either weak or strong it is. Most people just let it control their life, but hopefully...
Mental health can consist of various different things such as depression, anxiety and behavioural diseases or disorders, and it's a way where people can actually communicate and make people aware of the problems they have within themselves.
Yeah, as you've all said and touched on, mental health can affect many different areas in your life. Hamzah, as you said, it can affect your aspirations, the way you want to push forward in life. As you said, Esah, depression, anxiety, there are lots of different ones that exist, some which I think collectively we all know more about, and some that we probably know a little bit less about because they're not spoken about as much, whether that's in the news, we don't see it as much in like films or TV shows, or if we do, we see it in such a stigmatized way, which I think can be quite unhealthy, especially if we don't know about certain things. So, I just want to get into finding out a little bit more about what you think about mental health and the education system. Like, how does that feel? Are the education system good with mental health? Are they bad with mental health? Where do they kind of sit at the moment? Esah, I'll start with you.
In certain schools, mental health is treated quite unfairly, and people treat quite unfairly, thinking that they won't be able to succeed in life because of the way they are, and they won't be able to do particular things. But in other schools, they're treated perfectly fine, and they have facilities for people who have mental health issues, and they can just go there and communicate with teachers or whoever's there.
I just have a question for you. Do you think that there are certain mental health disorders that have that better treatment and others that have that worse treatment?
That depends on what the mental health problem is. If it's someone who has depression, then there's plenty of facilities for that person, and there's like health lines for them as well. But if it's for another type of mental health, for example, suicide, there would be a few facilities, however, that they would be more serious and they would be taken really seriously.
Sid, what do you think about like education, colleges and mental health? Do you think they go well together, or do you think they're not doing the best job?
I don't think they go well together at all, to be honest, because a lot of schools or colleges, say if you didn't want to get out of bed in the morning because you felt too depressed or you just physically couldn't, they would just say you were lazy or get in and it's not their problem, or you just got to keep doing it. But a lot of the time people can't do it, but they still have to. Or if even if you got too much anxiety to even like get on a bus or just go into college or school because there's too many people, but you still have to anyway, and they don't help you at all. Not a lot of the time anyway.
So by what you're saying, it sounds like schools lack a lot of compassion in the area of mental health. Like they aren't willing to either learn anything or even support young people going through different mental health episodes. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing. Hamzah, what do you think about this? Do you think it's good, bad, indifferent? Where do you sit on this?
Well, first of all, I'd like to make a disclaimer to the viewers. As Esah said, we will be tackling tough subjects in this episode. They may come up. When it comes to education and their handling of mental health, I feel like colleges are slightly better at it than schools, but I think that a check needs balancing between the two, because schools, like primary and secondary school, are your most impressionable years. They are the years that help you form your personality, who you are, what your interests are, what your views are. And in schools, there's almost no resources for, like, especially in primary schools. Like, I think primary school kids especially need to learn about this because, like, we see as kids get older, they just don't know how to handle it because they weren't given that solid foundation to learn about it at a very young age, and I feel like that needs to change. So yeah.
Thank you. So if you were in that position of power and you could say to every primary school, every secondary school in the UK, you need to do this, what would that be?
I've said it before, and if I had the money, I would make sure that every primary school, every secondary school, and every college up and down the UK had an on-site counsellor, and all students could access that counselling for free. They wouldn't have to pay for anything, because mental health is paramount, in my opinion, to us living as people.
Thank you for sharing. And I think it's interesting that you talked about like having counsellors and people in schools, because that obviously is one of the ways in which that can help people's mental health. There are plenty of different ways, from CBT to different medications and all of that, but I think it's very, very great that you touched on that. Obviously throughout this world, and in not even just the UK, mental health has been this recurring issue that's come up quite a lot. Recently, I think there's been a survey done that globally 1 in 7 10 to 19-year-olds experience mental disorders, which accounts for roughly about 13% of the world. So 30% of the world of that age group, which is a lot of young people. And then if you go up a little bit in age, that can sit somewhere between like a fifth of young people in that age bracket, according to the World Health Organization. And I think there needs to be something that is done quite urgently. Like, there have been many kind of crises and pandemics and stuff that have happened over the last couple of years here in the UK. But I think there's also one of mental health. Does anyone else like feel that or agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that, because like individually, I experienced quite a few problems. Like I suffered from anxiety, and that was in primary school and secondary school where it lasted. And I don't know whether the reason was prolonging, but it was because whenever I used to need some time out, I would have to ask my teacher. And I think that would be a main issue for me, because I would feel a bit nervous and I wouldn't really feel safe to ask the teacher, because they would end up like going into detail saying, why do you need the time out, and how long you're going to be and stuff like that. So this stayed with me until secondary school. But then when I did public speaking in secondary school, then I just felt much more confident, and it was like it was like my anxiety completely went, and I just became confident. I was like a new me. And then when I started college, I had more support, like from my tutors and the people around me, and it made me feel much better.
Thank you very much for sharing. And I think what I've taken from that is, if you intervene earlier, then maybe you can actually support and help that person, because as you said, like, you're now in college and you're a lot more confident, which is amazing to hear, and thank you so much for sharing that. Sid, how do you feel about the fact that there's so much mental health in the world, specifically for younger people?
It's not really taken too seriously too much, because of how common it is nowadays. Some people just say, oh, you don't really have it, or you're faking it. Just when you need them the most, some people just will just not be there, and you got to accept that sometimes. But there's always someone there, even if you feel like there's not. You can call people, or even some people you can talk to your parents or your guardians. But the main thing is to actually talk, because a lot of people find that quite difficult.
I kind of have a question for all of you. I think there is a big stigma with young men, in particular, with talking about mental health. Collectively and individually, how do you think that we could go to kind of breaking that stigma? Because it exists everywhere. Like, if you look at older generations, looking down at younger generations, they didn't have to deal with it in the way that we are dealing with mental health. So do you think there are certain things that we could do to help to break that stigma?
I mean, men tend to fear the masculinity of like asking and stuff like that, but I think they were there was counselling for them, and if there was like a environment where they could be themselves, then I think they would kind of break it and just allow themselves to talk about their problems and mental health issues.
Sid, how do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, men just don't talk about it because they're afraid, because a lot of the time if a man's seen crying or talking about his feelings, a lot of people just tell him to man up. But personally, I don't think anybody should ever say that. But it's said quite a lot. But men should talk more and more and more. Even with my friends, they don't talk. But of course, I'm here for them. But I know they've got problems, but they just won't talk about it. And that's the most annoying thing, because you know you can help, but they're just not ready to talk, or they don't know how to do it.
Exactly. I agree with both Sid and Esah 100%. Like, for example, my dad, he's Muslim. He comes from a very traditional Muslim background. And when he grew up, the men crying or showing emotion was seen as weakness. In secondary school especially, I would cry at everything because it was this one built up ball of like not allowing myself to let emotions out. So if one person like insulted me, or if one person like ghosted me or like trolled me over social media, I would just cry and have this massive like the floodgates would open of all this pain and all this sadness that I hadn't had an outlet to let out for such a long time. And the main thing we need to say to men is that it's okay, you can talk, it's fine. Like, someone will care, someone will, like, even if it's just one person, they will.
I think it's so important, like, even if you just have one person, then, you know, you still have someone. I feel like everyone, wherever you are, everyone has someone that, even if they don't know it yet, that they can turn to. And I think that's really important, that, you know, everyone listening or watching understands that not only are there organisations out there to support you, there are friends, there are family, there's a lot of people there to support you. Hamzah, I think it's really interesting what you're saying about men's mental health, and how like the perception of it can often come across, very air quoted here, like more feminine or less strong, or all of those kinds of things. Do you think that kind of interaction, specifically if people do that online, do you think that can lead to, you know, further bullying from other men, or even, you know, people trying to counsel them in any way?
I think that, cancel culture, I think, is, especially in the minds of young people, has been like the biggest contributor for like young people, especially teenagers, like having anxiety and depression, because there's so much pressure on them to know what the right thing is to say, know what the right opinion is, whatever that is, on whatever subject. Like, you can't disagree with anyone anymore, and that's why if all my friends weren't on social media, I wouldn't have social media, because for me especially, it's not healthy. I lower down my social media consumption to like 3 hours a day max, and those 3 hours are like spaced out throughout the day. Like, I'll check my Insta once in the morning when I get up, once when I'm eating my dinner, and then once before I go to sleep. That's it.
Does anyone else think that, you know, social media has and can continue to probably have a detrimental effect on mental health?
It can, because, I mean, this goes equally for men and women, and it's either if they've posted a picture of themselves or of their family or anyone they know, and if they get trolled for it, then that would affect their mental health, thinking, oh no, why am I being trolled? And that would be a concern for them, and that's why social media does have a few disadvantages and advantages, but the advantages are more than the actual disadvantages.
Okay, so Sid, I'm going to come to you. Just thinking about mental health and social media, do you think there could be any benefits to using social media for your mental health?
Definitely, there could be some benefits, but the benefits could be, say, if you're confident enough to post and ask for help, a lot of people could pop up and say, "Oh yeah, do you want to talk?" But there are, I reckon, the disadvantages outweigh the advantages. Because say if you did post and say something like that, a lot of people would just say you were seeking for attention, or a lot of people would screenshot it and put in their stories and go, "Oh, look at him, that he's weak." But there's so many disadvantages that it outweighs the advantages, so that a lot of people just don't, because there's not too much point.
I just want to add on to that, because I think it's a really poignant, point, and like a couple years ago, I would post on my Insta weekly, and a lot of it would be like me talking about political issues that I was passionate about, and other times it was about just me venting about my mental health and how a lot of people didn't understand me. And then I would check a week later, and only like 1 or 2 people would like it, and I had hundreds of friends, and they didn't see it. And I checked my story, and they viewed, and there were so many people that viewed it but didn't like or comment on the post, like viewed the story but didn't like or comment on the post, or like checked to see if I was okay. So that in turn affected my mental health quite badly, because that perpetuated the fear I already had that, oh, nobody cares about me, like, or they probably think I'm just seeking attention or something like that. So like about 6 months ago, I just stopped posting like my opinions on Insta, and I just message my friends directly and talk about it in private. I don't really share it with the world anymore, because it's like, one, people could just, insult me or troll me or stuff, or like people could take what I'm saying out of context and like paint me in a bad light or something. So like from now on, I usually talk about my mental health with people I know I can trust in private. I think that's the best thing to do. Because if you do it on social media, I think, yeah, you, like Sid said, you could open yourself up to people who genuinely want to help and talk to you, but then again, the more likely outcome, because it's social media, is that you're gonna get a lot more people who are just mean and terrible.
I feel like social media can really be that minefield of where, you put something out into the world that, whether you're talking about your mental health, whether, you're sharing something you're passionate about, whether it's your music, whether it's, your art or whatever it is, and then people always seem to take that negative spin on it. And I think that's really unfortunate of the world that we live in, that so many people do that, whether it's people online, in person, everywhere around the world, people do that. And I think specifically taking social media into consideration, I think, Hamzah, what you said is brilliant about, speaking to those trusted people, because if you just tell everyone, you don't know necessarily all of the people who are following you, and equally on social media, there are people hiding in the background. There are like the ghost accounts that exist, so they could be there. So I think it's very, very good to stay as safe as you possibly can when you're online, but then also enjoy the space that you create for yourself as well. We've spoken quite a lot about different areas of mental health, and I think it's something that both Hamzah and Esah both mentioned a little while ago, which is how mental health can interact with the different parts of your life. So whether it's your parents, your friends, whether it's the cultures that you're from, the communities that you're from, sometimes there can be a bit of friction, and obviously we don't want that friction to be there at all. So what do you think, or do you think that there are any ways to combat certain types of friction when it's to do with whether it's mental health and culture, whether it's mental health and community, or mental health and family? Do you think there are any solutions to that, or is it just an idea that everyone needs to learn a lot, or do you think there are certain things that we could do?
There's a quote from a TV show that I really like, and it's family is not a right, it's not a privilege, it has to be earned. And thank you, Jason Segel. And you hear all these stories about how someone's parents were abusive to them, or just didn't care about them, weren't there emotionally for them, but they found family with their friends, or with their swimming group, or with their football team, or something like that. Whatever community you can find, eventually you will find your people. Is basically what I'm trying to say. You just need to keep looking. It's only recently, within the past year or so, where I've really found people who understand me for me.
Sid, do you have anything?
Yeah, just because somebody loves you doesn't mean they're gonna say something. Say you tell somebody something and they go tell everybody else, they can go, well, I love you, but that's not the same. The best thing is if they say stuff bad about you to your face and then they're nice behind your back. That's what I live by, pretty much.
I mean, I think it's important to have parents who actually take their children's health in consideration, and because nowadays you get parents who just wrap their kids in cotton wool and leave them aside, thinking, oh, we don't care about them, just leave them to it, they can do what they like. But that shouldn't be the case. They should be supporting their kids, whatever choices they make. They should be there with them. They should help communicate with them, and they should always be by their side. Even if they're struggling with anything, they could always make an impact, and that could be for the best.
Thank you. I think everything of what all of you have just said is so important, and I think anyone listening who's a parent, a guardian, you're supporting young people in any way, please take this on board, because it's so important that you actually care about those young people. And also, if they tell you something in confidence, don't just go and spread it around everywhere like rumours, because it's not helpful. And obviously, as you said, Sid, there is a level of loyalty that has to be there, and I think that's very, very powerful. And I think all of you slightly touched on it a little bit, so we're going to move on to what we all wish professionals knew. So whether that's teachers, doctors, governments, what do you wish that they knew about young people's mental health? Esah, I'll start with you.
I wish they knew that people's mental health can start from any age, but including how they've become that way. They can be anxious when they start something new, but that's what some people tend to not realize, and professionals sometimes not realize that as well. And that's why they think, oh, I didn't know this, so how could I know more about it? And that's where the person who has the mental health problem just communicates to them and makes them aware of that problem. And I think that's how professionals can understand it properly.
Thank you. Sid, what do you wish that professionals knew?
I wish they didn't think a lot of the time it's always a one size fits all, because they always go, oh yeah, because this happened with this person, this will happen for you, because everybody's mental health is completely different. So you need to treat it like a new single person every single time.
Thank you. Hamzah, what about you?
Exactly, I agree with both of you a lot. And I just wish that especially governments and education, we are the future. People like us are the future. We're going to be the ones here in 10, 20 years. And if people like teachers and people, high-ranking officials in government are still going to be like I'll tell a personal story just to get across the point I'm trying to make. In year 11, I was super depressed and I had massive anxiety when it came to my exams, to the point that I was basically suicidal. And I spoke in my annual review meeting and I was like, the pressure you guys are putting me under makes me want to end my life. And one of my teacher's responses was, every year 11's feeling the pressure, you just had to work through it. And no one in the room defended me when I started crying. None of the TAs, none of the teachers, none of the officials. My mum was the only person in the room who was holding me and kind of comforting me. And then as soon as we exited the meeting, all the TAs and all the teachers who weren't that teacher were like, oh, I totally disagree with what she said, that was way out of line. And I was like, defend me. Like, don't just like say at the minute that one person's back is turned. Like, if she said some messed up stuff, almost got this video demonetized, sorry. If she said some messed up stuff, call her out on her messed up stuff. And I understand there comes a point where you fear for your job if you stand up to a superior, but sometimes the right thing to do is enough of a good reason to like be like, you know what, forget that, I'm just gonna do the right thing. And I wish they did do that. And I'd also say, like Sid say, don't treat every kid like they're the same, whether that be mental health, whether that be like exams, like exam methods, like exam arrangements and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, just don't treat us all like the same, because there's a reason why there's a word in the dictionary called individual, because that's what we all are, individual.
Thank you so much, every single one of you, for sharing. If anyone listening, whoever you are, can take anything from this, be compassionate, don't treat everyone the same, and, you know, be an advocate. Like, genuinely be an advocate. If a young person is asking for support, asking for help, if you see that they're struggling, advocate for them to, you know, get the support that they need, because if you don't, who will? And it's so vital and it's so necessary that all young people across the UK, all over this world, gets that support.
I'd just like to clarify, I love my parents. Thank you to my parents. Thankfully, I'm one of the lucky few who has really good parents. So, and my heart aches for those of you who might not necessarily have that. But know that you are loved.
Thank you. Big up all of the great parents and guardians and everyone supporting young people who, you know, are putting that effort in and doing it every single day.
If you have felt affected by today's topics in the episode, there'll be many opportunities to get help, like CAMS, Talking Space Plus, Samaritans, Childline. If there are any children listening to this, stay strong and know that you are loved.
So thank you, every single one of you, for being on this episode, for sharing, you know, lots of different things that are so helpful for many people. I hope this conversation was helpful for you all as well. So yeah, if you enjoyed this episode of Are You Listening, make sure you subscribe wherever you are. So whether you are on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or subscribe to us on YouTube. And make sure you're following us on social media. That's Oxfordshire Youth on Instagram and TikTok, and Ox Youth on Twitter. Thank you for watching. Thank you everyone for being here. Really, really appreciate you. And we will see you next time.
What an amazing episode that was. The young people covered mental health in a variety of different ways, specifically focusing in on men's mental health, the stigmas that go along with it, cancel culture, and ways in which we can bridge the generational divides between older and younger men. They also speak about the different ways in which they would love professionals not only to support them, but other young people. This podcast production was supported by Health Watch Oxfordshire. If you want to find out more, make sure you go and check them out on social media, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And if you want to raise your voice about different healthcare and social care things happening in Oxfordshire, make sure you head to Health Watch's website, which is healthwatchoxfordshire.co.uk/services to share anything that you would like to. For all the professionals listening to this episode, we want to thank you for taking the time out to listen to what young people have to say. We would love to hear from you and find out what ideas from this episode that you'll be taking away to put into your practice. And just like always, no matter what it is, you can get in contact with us via social media, or you can also get in contact via our website through our contact form.